Hi guys, Alberto here. You're watching the Bedroom Rocker YouTube channel, and today we are using AmpliTube 5 to demonstrate two different recording techniques for electric guitar. The first one is to use a wet-dry amp setup, and the second one is to double track guitars. So first I'm gonna do a small tutorial session and show you on AmpliTube how to set this up and how it sounds. And finally, I'm gonna use both of these techniques within a small mix track that I have created. Finally, we move on to the review and to the final thoughts part. So let's check it out. So let's first take a look at the wet-dry rig. I have used a wet-dry setup for two different guitar tracks in my mix, and let's get started with the melody guitar track. So let's open AmpliTube and take a look at the setup. So the idea is to use two different amps. One is going to be the dry amp. In this case, this is the Brit 8000 or the Marshall JCM 800. And I didn't add any effect in this line. It just goes straight into the 4x12 cabinet, which is mic'd with two different microphones. And then as the wet amp, I have the American Tube Clean one, which is based on a Fender Super Reverb. And then I have added three different effects here in the loop. So I have the delay, I have a tremolo, and I have a chorus as well. And besides that, I still have the spring reverb coming from the amp itself. So it's quite a lot of wet effects going on here. And usually if you have that as your single amp, the sound is going to be super messy and mushy, and it's going to be quite an unusable sound. And that's the idea of the wet-dry rig. So we can dial in a lot of wet effects here in the wet amp, because the dry amp is gonna take care of retaining the punch and the clarity. The wet amp is going into the 4x10 cabinet, which is the default for the Fender Super Reverb here, mic'd with two different microphones. So let's hear first the wet amp by itself. I'm gonna solo this track here, and I'm going to mute the Marshall so that you hear the Fender by itself. So that's quite a roomy sound, doesn't have a lot of definition, and it will certainly get lost in a band mix. Now let's unmute the Marshall, and I'm going to mute the Fender. So now you're only hearing the dry amp. Now let's put them both together. So that's quite a nice sound. You get sort of the punch, the clarity from the dry amp, the Marshall, which is even adding a little bit of a slight breakup. And then as the wet amp, we have the Fender with way more wetness, as you would typically be able to dial in if you're using the Fender by itself. And we have the spring and the spring reverb and the delay adding some roominess, the tremolo adding some movement to the sound, and finally the chorus also adding some nice overtones there. So I have used a very similar setup for my solo guitar sound, which I will show you right now. So for the solo, I have been a bit more careful dialing in the wet amp so that the solo can stand out in the mix. So I dialed the wet amp a little bit back. And also here I didn't use the chorus, so I only have the delay and the tremolo. But otherwise the setup is exactly the same. So let's, again, just the wet amp by itself, just the Fender. So you wouldn't use that as your main solo sound. And now the Marshall by itself. And now both of them together. So that's it, that's the wet-dry rig. The next technique that I want to cover is double tracking guitars. This technique has been employed in studios since ages. There are many different ways that you can do it, but the general idea is always the same. So you're gonna record the same guitar part twice, and you're gonna end up playing them slightly different on each recording, and it's exactly these small differences that's going to add some special flavor to your mix. And one very nice way to do it, especially for overdriven rhythm guitar or for like heavy guitar riffs, is to pan one of the tracks to the left and pan the other track to the right. And this helps to create like a wall of sound effect and just make your guitar sounds huge. So this is what I have attempted to do here. I have two overdriven guitar tracks. The first one has been recorded with my D'Angelico Deluxe Bedford into the Marshall JCM 800, and then I have used here a 4x12 cabinet loaded with Celestion greenbacks, and this track is panned hard to the left, and this is how it sounds like. Now the other track has a very similar setup, but I have used the PRS SE Custom 24. I have used the same amp, and I have switched the cabinet for also a 4x12 but loaded with Celestion G12 80s. So this is just some small variations to add a bit more flavor to the sound. You could, for example, apply different EQs and apply different microphones and also play with different pannings. In my case, I have then just panned this track hard right, and this is how it sounds like. And now when you put them both together, it sounds like this. So that's the double tracking technique. So let me know what you think about the recording techniques and about the sounds. Overall, I'm really happy with the final result. I think the track turned out great. The wet dry rig is something that I've been wanting to try for a while now. The guys from that pedal show use it quite extensively. However, at the moment, I do not have two amplifiers to try it out in the real life, so I decided to give it a go using AmpliTube 5. The double tracking technique is something that I've been using quite extensively in my previous videos, and I think it's a very easy trick to pull off, and that always adds a lot of character and a lot of value to the recordings, so definitely give it a go. Today's video was a bit different. Usually I focus more on gear demos and reviews, and today was a bit more of a tutorial. But if this is valuable to you, and if you like this type of format, please let me know in the comment section below. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. So that's it for today. If the video was helpful to you, make sure to leave a like, and if you like this kind of content, make sure to hit the subscribe button and check my other videos. Finally, if you want to support what I'm doing here, make sure to check the description box below. There you'll find the link to my Patreon page and also my affiliate links. If you use them to buy anything, I earn a small commission that really helps me to get more products and making reviews at no additional cost for you. Keep on rocking and cheers!